What's up, Gearheads? Jared here. Today we're going to do a twin stick NP205 conversion for the stubby truck on here. If some of you, if you've seen my previous videos, you've noticed that I've done a recently rebuilt NP205. Although afterwards I decided I was going to do the twin stick conversion. I should have figured that out before because it was already torn apart. But I'm going to get into that now and do that conversion, and it's going to pair with this LQ9 that I have backed by a 4L65E and with the NP205 behind an advanced adapters kit. So let's get into it. I have this kit from JB Fabrication that I bought and gonna install that on the NP205. Let's get into it. All right, so I've got the instructions over here as well, which leave some room for improvement, that's for sure. And then the parts from the kit, they've got these nice shift boots that we'll install in the truck. All the hardware here in the tray. We've even got the balls, the shift balls for the shifters, and they do include the little sticker here for knowing what your shifters are, so you can put it somewhere in the truck. I also have a variety of punches ready, just in case, depending on what I need. We've got the NP205, and then the actual shifters themselves over here with a hammer. Some seals for the NP205. We need a 3/4 inch thin wall socket to get these guys off. And then, like I said, this is recently rebuilt, but there are some things. So like when we punch in the freeze plug, that's going to drop in the motor, and there's also going to be a roll pin that's going to drop in the motor, or not the motor, the transfer case. So I'll have to open up the side cover here as well to get in and retrieve those so we can reuse them, hopefully, and we'll go from there. But yeah, first step is using your 3/4 inch socket. I've already broke these free, but basically we're going to start with the rear stick here per their instructions. Essentially, we need to pull this out. We need to pull the pins here. You got the little cotter pins. Pull all, just pull the linkage apart, and then we're going to get in here, and we're going to pull this detent. So underneath this nut is a spring. I'm going to place that there carefully. I'm just placing it down below. And then I have a little magnet pickup. There's a ball in here that we want to make sure to get that ball. That little guy. It's going to come out. I'm going to keep it on my magnet. And then we are going to find the correct size punch here, and that one might be a little big, and we're going to punch in this freeze plug. So I'm going to pause that real quick. Should just take a couple taps with the hammer over here, and that's going to drop the freeze plug into the motor. And then from there, in this little access, we should see a roll pin that is holding this rear arm in place. We're going to knock that roll pin through. Hopefully I can show it as best as possible. And then we should be able to pull out the rear linkage there. All right, so I just quickly got the linkage off by pulling the cotter pins, pulling the pins up, and then just kind of setting everything over the side, partially working on my plasma table slash drain pan lid here, but it turns out the transfer case is actually dry anyway, so it'll be easy to pull the stuff out of it, because I actually had a company rebuild it, and they handed it off to me dry, which I had forgotten about. But I have it lined up. You can actually see the roll pin in there, right there. So we're just going to match that size with a punch and get in there and hammer it out. I think this little guy should fit, maybe. I'm going to test it when it's not on camera, but yeah, basically we need to hammer that pin through, and then it's going to drop out, and then we can pull this. Just a quick note, this punch did do the job perfectly. It's a little over 1/8 of an inch thick, not quite 3/16, but yep, that was the correct size, all right. All right, so we got the shift rod out of the transfer case. I've got an Allen in there that's holding the shift linkage in place. Let's see if I can kind of see it in there. So that's being held in place. to make sure it doesn't drop or fall out of place, or it's not easily retrievable. But basically what we're going to be doing per the instructions is we're going to modify this rear detent and the front one there. So you can see, so we're going to go 7/8 minimum on the bottom, 1 and 1/32 on the top minimum. So basically I'm going to measure the bottom here before it ramps up and make that 7/8, and then I'll work on copying this angle basically for the ramp up there to get it to match those specifications. And then same for this one. So you can see we got 7/8 min on the, 7/8 minimum on top, 5/8 minimum on bottom. So same thing, I'm going to measure the bottom here and leave the back, not touch that, and basically measure it out to there-ish for 5/8, and then copy that same ramp that it has. That's a more gradual one in the front, and then that's a steep one there. And we'll get to it. I'm going to start, I have this like these orange wheels. I'm going to use that. I'm just going to steer away from the flap wheel because I'm worried about it having like a side-to-side motion or not being super precise. So I'm going to start with that orange wheel and make sure not to touch this bottom part, but only grind forward and ramp that out and see how we do. All right, so we should have this ground down to meet the specifications. See, I went a little more smooth with the detent in the front there, just because I'm hoping it helps improve the shift. And then the rear should be all to spec. I'm going to try it out, put it in and test it and make sure we're all good. But yeah, basically we need to get this put back in. And what I'm going to do is wiggle my little Allen there, get this bad boy lined up, and it should go in pretty easily once I get, it's going to require 2 hands, but once I get the shift fork lined up. And yeah, it's going to install like that basically. And then we're going to take our hardware and install it on here. So one thing I actually have to do is I forgot to mention I cut off that the arm that comes off the end right here. So I forgot to clean this up a little bit. So make sure to put a little bit of a chamfer on here because it'll make it much easier when installing the hardware that's supposed to go on, because otherwise, it's not going to want to fit on. So just put a little bit of an edge on it, like this one's already pretty smooth. And it's going to make it a lot easier for you to get that hardware on. So let me do that, and then I'm going to need 2 hands to slide this all together, and I'll get it back in place here. All right, here's a little shot of the side of the transfer case with that cover off. Right here is our little shift linkage. I got my finger on it there. So you can manipulate it to get this rod in. It is a little bit of a bugger, you gotta get it just right. It's tight tolerances, and don't hammer too hard. I mean, you can give this thing a couple taps and, try to spin it a little bit, but don't hammer on it too hard to mess with that linkage. And then let's see if I can get in there. Yep, there's my roll pin and my little freeze plug. So I'm gonna get those out right now, and so that way I can get them back in place once this rod is all lined up. That's the inside. Nice, clean, rebuilt transfer case. All right, it's not really focusing there. See if we can get it. I'm trying to show you. There we go. You got the roll pin. Sorry, it's changing focus. But basically, you have to get the hole for the shift linkage. You'll see it if you get a little flashlight and shine it down in there. And then the hole for this guy. So there's 2 holes. There's a hole through this actual rod and a hole for the linkage in there. You just got to get them lined up, and then we can get our roll pin back in. So there's a few different ways to do this. If you have a good sized punch, you can get this roll pin lined up on that punch and get started. You can also use a screw basically and screw the wood screw into it a little bit to hold it. Basically something that'll let you get this in here and hopefully not drop it. You'll just have to pull it back out, assuming you have the cover still open. And and get it lined up and just start it in that hole. And then we can use a punch, one that's bigger than the one we got out with, ideally, to hammer it home and make sure we got that thing lined up. So I'm going to do that now. Basically get it on one of my little drivers here, maybe this little guy, and get it lined up, and then we'll drive it home. All right, so it's all together. I didn't put the detent in yet, just because it makes it really easy to move this and test. But yeah, basically now you can move. I'm gonna get the linkages all together and everything, but everything's back together. The roll pin, yeah, the easiest way I found that worked for me was basically put it onto the roll pin had two sides to it. One that's a little bit more open, so I slid that on here, and one that's a little bit more rounded. And basically was able to get it started this way by gently tapping it in and then twisting this with a pair of pliers to remove it, and then use a larger punch to get it in. But anyway, yeah, so now we basically have 4 low, and then just gently, if I find the space where it's supposed to be, because there's no detent, there we go. So that's front only, right? Yeah, front only. And then pull that out, and we should have neutral. And pull this bad boy out. We got high only. And then if we're able to pull this out, which it's nice and sticky right now for the rebuild, so I can't do it by hand, but we gotta tap it out. Give me 1 sec to do that. All right, tapped it out. So now we've got high. It's 4 high. Or, of course, we can, just do a front dig, for example. Or, let's see if I can, sorry for the phone. That should be neutral. I'll test it right now. Yeah, it's neutral. And then, so for example, we can just do rear wheel high or rear wheel low. Same thing, you just push it all the way in. Get it, you'll see the detent line up in there. There we go, rear low. Sweet. All right, so I'm gonna drop the ball back in here. Get neutral, I'm gonna drop the ball back in there, put the spring in, get this all lined up, make sure these two are both tight, and get my access cover back on here and make sure it's all sealed. And then we're gonna put our linkages on. So these, I believe it goes on like that. All right, here we go. I got the arms on. So this is the first one, and you want to make sure to use the longer hardware. There's 2 sets. If you use the short one, it just won't have enough for a nut on the backside to use them. And then they give you these nuts to use as spacers in here too, just as like a little placeholder, so you can basically put those in. But yeah, I'm not going to do the full linkage and everything right now, but as you can see in the kit, there's the actual links in here for the Heim joint linkage, which is nice because it'll give you adjustment for the arms. I'm going to do that once it's in the truck. So right now I'm just going to cover up to this point, and then I'm going to actually install the transfer case in the truck because the adapter is in there, and the adapter is what the arms actually bolts onto. So I need to bolt the arms in place and get them in the truck in order to hook up the linkage, and then I can do the adjustments there. So for this video, we're just covering, basically up to this point. So what I want to do now is drop the bolt in there. Well, I'm going to take it back out and get this spacer in, and then we're all good. I mean, I just need to put the access cover back on. But as you can see, this is tested. We've got the arms, the detent is back in, everything. So we're all good to go with this guy, and it's ready to basically go in the truck as soon as I get these the last nuts on there and the bolt all cinched up. All right, well, hopefully that helps somebody out. Just be careful with your grinder. You don't want to ruin this rear shift rod. And then make sure to test it. Follow the specs that they give you and then test it to make sure that the shifting actually works smooth and perfect before you cinch everything up and get it back together. And you should be all good to go. All right, we got the NP205 twin sticks installed in the truck. This opening existed before I got here. So what I'm going to do is basically measure, it comes with a boot. So I'm going to fill in this opening and basically just see how far they move when I shift. So for example, this is your rear wheel drive. This is your rear drive shaft. This is your front drive shaft. So that would be rear low. And then we have four wheel low. So you can see I'm taking up a majority of the space there. So I don't have a ton of extra gap. So that'll be good for the boot. All right, we're gonna put them back in neutral there. And basically we have rear wheel high and four wheel high, or just front wheel drive in high mode, or front wheel drive in low mode. So that's how the twin stick works. So if we look down in here, you can see where they connect. So basically it just uses the heim joints in there. Here, sorry, let me go around a little bit. You can see from that side, you can kind of see the heims a little bit in there. But basically that's the NP205 connected via an advanced adapters kit to the 4L65 that I have. I'll show you a picture from the bottom as well. But overall, really like how this turned out. Perfectly fine to machine them, you know, with the grinder, basically. Just be careful about it and everything. But yeah, I'll do a real quick final cut once these are fully installed. It looks like, oh, I haven't tightened the bolt that goes in yet. That's why. So it started to go into the adapter here. Let's see. Yeah, so you can see the gap right there. That's why we're getting side to side play, because that bolt's not tightened yet. So I'm going to do that. But otherwise, the front to rear play in the heims is solid. I mean, there's not a lot there. So yeah, pretty snazzy. I'll show you from the bottom real quick and then a final install. All right, here's what it looks like from the bottom with the heims installed in the orientation that I did them. So on the heims they provide, there's a stud, basically. I use that stud to go into, not the transfer case, but on the shifters themselves. And then I use the bolts, so that way I can control their heads are and everything on the connectors that actually go into the transfer case. But yeah, I basically just used almost their out-of-the-box measurements, how they were. Basically, I just tightened them in all the way, then backed them out about a quarter turn. And then now I just have to tighten, you know, I've tested the length and everything. They're aligned well together, as you saw up above. So now you just gotta tighten the jam nuts in there. It's all 1/2 inch hardware. So basically just 2 1/2 inch wrenches, you'll be all good. Or 13 mil, whatever you go for. And then tightening that one, I think the larger one was a 13/16. I'm not 100% off that, so I'll have to double check. But basically now that I'm all done, just cinch that guy in and throw some Loctite on there and we're all good. Well, just for the sake of showing the finished product in here with the twin stick install that we're going through, there it is, sitting next to the Sidewinder shifter, all installed. So nice shifting on it. Yeah, it's all good. Got it sealed up with the carpet and everything, and then got this bad boy installed next to it with a custom little aluminum plate there to seal it all up. All right, everyone, thanks for checking out that video. As you can see, it's perfectly doable at home with a grinder. So the orange disc that I use, it's this Flextron orange disc by Pearl that works really, really good. So I just kind of roughed it out with that and then made sure not to cut too deep on anything, and then came back with a 80 grit flap wheel and basically just touched it up, made sure that the surface was as smooth as possible there, and then also just fine tune that ramp coming out of it. Make sure not to hit the rest of the rod, anything like that. I mean, it's not the end of the world, but you want to keep those the surfaces as good as possible for the seals around there, and make sure the ramping is all smooth and everything. But just take your time, follow the measurements that they give you, try to mark them out so you know exactly where to cut up to, and don't go too far past it. You can always cut too little and then touch it up as you go. But yeah, I got it in one shot. You can definitely do that too. And get that NP205 with the twin stick in there, and let's go wheeling. All right, have a good one, everyone. See you, Gearheads.